Hi, all, and thank you for joining us today. I am very excited to be having our guest, Dan Hackett, share a little bit on how to boost profit. I know that's something that I, as a sales coach, I'm all about bringing in all of the revenue, but I'm not the person you should talk to about keeping all of it and how to appropriate funds. So, Dan, you want to give a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thanks, Rachel. So I am a CPA. I've been a CFO and also a company president. But in addition to that, I have facilitated well over 100 all-day planning sessions, all for small businesses. So I tend to look at their problems from a couple of different perspectives. And that's really what has led me to a real focus on profit.
Now, what is it that got you into focusing on small businesses specifically? Like, how did that all come about?
Like most people who are watching this, I've spent some time at the big companies and I enjoyed all of that time. But after a while, I just started to feel pigeonholed. And coming right out of school, I was in public accounting and at a CPA firm. And of course, many of my clients were small business owners. And while I was a tax guy at the time, I found myself just always asking them questions about their business. And it was just amazing to me how flexible they were. They could change directions in a matter of weeks or months, depending upon the size of the business. And it was also just about the control that they had over the business. It was really impressive. And it's what attracted me to work with business owners so that I feel like if I can provide them some good guidance and some good ideas, we can watch those take shape, almost instantly.
Mm-hmm. What are the types of businesses or the struggles that business owners are normally going through when they contact you and say, "Help! How do we fix this?"
Yeah, so some owners are feel like they're drowning, and others just feel like they're on a treadmill. And then there are a couple who astutely recognize that their business is growing very fast, and if it keeps up, that they're going to be in real trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go back to the more common complaint, and that is either a feeling of drowning, which really just means too much stress and too much of the day to day, or the same on a treadmill, meaning my business isn't growing, profits are kind of okay, but I'm just not really feeling like I'm driving the business the way I should.
Mm-hmm.
These business owners carry around a lot of guilt. And one of the things I do pretty early on because of my background is to try to take that away and remind them that they took a great chance in starting this business in the first place, or buying it, or just taking over. And you need to cut yourself some slack because you
Mm-hmm.
can't do all the work. And what often happens is they realize they can't do all the work, yet they still feel like they have to do all the work. And that then, of course, has all sorts of issues that are percolating underneath.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have definitely been guilty of being in those shoes. Guilty. I remember just thinking through all the things that I had to do, or if I'd missed something. And I think the reality is a lot of us are learning on the fly. There's not necessarily a degree that can cover all of the things
Right.
in small business. I remember the first time I had an HR problem, I had to call my dad and say, how on earth nobody told me this was in my job description. What do
Yeah.
I do here? And knowing that you can find the smartest person in the room and ask them for advice was something I learned very quickly, because
Yeah.
if they say no, then I'll go to the second smartest room. But I've gotten a lot of advice from just having the courage to ask somebody who's a lot smarter than myself in it, which is why I'm so glad that I'm connected to you. And I was really excited about that.
Yeah,
Um,
experience is huge, and I think you've identified probably the number one eye opener for business owners, particularly startups, and that is they realize that maybe not everyone has the same passion that they have. that doesn't make them poor employees. It just makes them different. And if you can't react to that as an owner, then you're really signing yourself up for a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now take me through like when clients start working with you, do you normally have a specific like startup session with them and then you meet weekly, monthly? How does that work?
Yeah. So typically, I locally I offer a workshop, and it's a profit acceleration workshop, and we go through some of the basics of looking at your profit and loss in a completely different way. Some of the lessons that come from that workshop are we want to focus on revenue, or we want to focus on profit over revenue, not to take anything away from sales coaches, but whatever it is that we're out there selling, we want to make sure that we keep some. Do a lot of work on pricing, just to help people understand that maybe there are different ways to price. And then we also spend a lot of time in articulating the value of the business, because if you can't differentiate yourself, then you're only left to compete on price. With those tools, I work with the business to create an assessment. I have a simulator, which is proprietary software, which helps me work through 10 or 12 of the most common areas where businesses struggle a little bit. And we work through some of the possibilities to create the profit potential for the business. From there, that kicks off a weekly coaching program. What's nice about it with the coaching program is that I can guarantee a positive return on investment, because we've identified the profit improvement that we're after. So I obviously make sure that my fees aren't anywhere close to that profit improvement. And then in the coaching, it's really up to me to help the owner prioritize which of those tools that we use first, second, and third, because the order matters a lot in terms of getting the most bang for your buck.
I just did your workshop yesterday, and I won't give away any of your secrets, but I was really excited to learn because, like you said, I'm a sales human. I just want to bring all the money in. And I think what I did poorly when I had my first business was not increasing I could reinvest in my company, which is great if I had intention with it. But instead I would just hire or bring in a new software, and I didn't have a budget for it. It wasn't an intentional thing. It just, I have the extra money now and I can go invest it. So I wish I had known you several years ago, but I liked how you were reframing a few things specifically on bringing value to the customer and not really discounting your services. I attended a networking meeting earlier this morning that I heard no less than 3 people say, well, if you refer me, I'll get you a discount on this. And it was interesting for me because I've never paid attention to that before. Right. And now I'm reframing how I think about that. And I told them all that they should come to your workshop.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah. Revenue is important. And so many times we find business owners have more of a sales and marketing background, and they're doing a terrific job driving the top line. But the bank cares a lot about the bottom line, because it's the bottom line that allows you to repay anything that you might borrow from a bank. And there's a commercial banker here in Cincinnati who told me that my workshop should be required for any business owner who wants to borrow from their bank. And that's because it's that focus on profit. In most cases, it's really the same thing as focusing on cash.
Well, and I think the downside of small business is a lot of us work so very hard. We put so many hours into our businesses because that's what we love and it's our passion. But we don't necessarily think through the fact that we may or may not be making just as much as we would if we had a regular job somewhere else. And the goal of us is freedom, not only from a time perspective, but also financially. And I think the other part is people don't think about the fact that they're going to want to retire one day, and how on earth will they do that while they're just in the moment and running. So I agree that people should 100% be mandatory to take your workshop.
Yeah, the value of the business, it doesn't really trade on the top line revenue. It's always, more often than not, it's a function of your profit or EBITDA. And so again, we all roads lead back to how much cash can you generate.
Now, what type of companies do you find typically that you are working with? Do you have a particular industry that tends to come, or is it just this can really apply to anybody?
No, it really applies to anyone. Obviously, those in the retail, in the trades, and the professional services are a great fit, particularly those run by an owner who is a creative and is really, really just wants to get back out and do what they do best, but they feel sort of constrained by inconsistent profits. So that's sort of what keeps them anchored to the business, and it really doesn't help them much. I also work with construction companies because, for obvious reasons, cash is king for construction companies, and the nature of construction contracts makes managing cash really difficult, particularly if you're a subcontractor. You're waiting on the general contractor and they promise to pay you on August 1st. And if they don't, it's important to have contingency plans before that date hits, not after.
Yeah. I've talked to several small business owners that have landed contracts with large companies. So the problem then becomes cash flow, because you shoot the commercial or you build the thing, and then you're waiting for 90 to 120 days, and you still have to pay your people, and just kind of navigating that and then hoping and keeping your fingers crossed that they actually do it at that 90 or 120 days.
That's right.
You really have to be very careful with your money on it.
Oh yeah. Fast growing firms can fail much faster than a slow growing firm. And people don't really like to hear that, but it's true for exactly the reason that you described. You outrun your cash and you quickly reach a point where the bank does not see you as very lendable. And then really it all kind of craters from there.
Okay. Now, I know that you sometimes have done fractional sales management as well for companies. And if somebody was interested in working with you in that capacity, I know you're focused predominantly on the coaching now. What type of industries would you be interested in working with if you were to go after that?
Yeah, so I still take on a few fractional CFO, COO roles. And the reason I describe it that way is that because I can come at it having already run a manufacturing company, I can step in and assist with getting you way beyond just what a CFO can do. And I end up really just working with the owner to really put in more systems in place and, more often than not, improve accountability. And for that, again, the principles are all the same. So I've done that with an HVAC company that tripled its revenue in 18 months because we worked through acquisitions and we enabled the owner to do that. Working with an e-commerce company and a construction company. And I finished up a gig not long ago with a staffing agency. So again, the principles are the same.
I think that's the fun part of what you and I do, is we get to meet and interact with so many cool small businesses and learn different industries and understand it, because at the end of the day, finance is finance, sales is sales. The skills still apply across industries, but it's just so much fun to get in there and learn something new.
Yeah, it is. And some owners get a little bit caught up in, oh, you don't know my industry. And, honestly, my answer is I don't have to.
Right.
You need to know your industry. I don't need to know your industry. I can just kind of take the building blocks and reform them and put them in something that creates a better foundation.
Okay. Now, I know that you and I both attended an AI boot camp last week, and we were both really fascinated about the applications that could be helping small businesses, and both spent our entire weekends playing around in what we learned. But what is one thing that you're excited about when it comes to where technology can come in at this point and help small businesses? I didn't tell you I was going to ask this ahead of time. So
No, it's okay. No. It's okay. Because if I just think about what I was looking at over the weekend, I shifted from ChatGPT to Claude, and I'm no expert, so I don't know that one is better than the other, but it fit me very well, and I used it for two completely different applications. The first application I used it for is I gave it all of my notes from a conversation I had with an employee, and I asked it to just create not only a job description, but some measurable outcomes. And what it gave me was not only a time saver, but it saw some relationships that maybe I wouldn't have seen right away. And the same thing, I also used it for just some pretty basic inventory analysis. I was calculating the gross margin for about 30 different models of this product. And I was really just trying to figure out where the biggest bang for the buck was. And it agreed with me on the first two analysis, and then it added a third and kind of just gave me a perspective that I hadn't really considered. So it AI is a tool, and what we learned also is everyone needs to know is you just need to keep getting better and better and better at creating prompts. And for those of a certain age, you maybe be glad to know that those of us who were creating prompts 20 or 30 years ago, well, that skill is back. We were just doing it for things like LexisNexis and things like that, right when some of the online databases were created. So we can kind of dust off some of those old tools and be relevant.
That's awesome. I definitely think that it's going to be interesting to see how small businesses adapt AI into their processes and how they get more efficient throughout. And it'll be very fun to keep an eye on. Now, out of curiosity, if somebody would like to work with you, where do they find you? How do they get a hold of you? I know I'll put everything in the show notes as well, but what are some ways they can work with you?
Yeah, so always contact me through LinkedIn, dan@theprofitarchitect.com. If you're local to the greater Cincinnati area, I offer workshops. I offer several a month, and if you get in touch with me, I can give you the links. These are no-cost workshops. They're no more than 2 hours long, and I can tell you after dozens have gone through, I guarantee that you'll walk away with some rock solid ideas to improve profits. If you are outside the area, since I haven't got quite yet to doing the workshop virtually, what I do offer is a no-cost assessment. So we can spend 45 minutes talking about your business and using my proprietary software, and I'll create some ideas for you that you can take with you. We can work together. It doesn't matter to me. What I just want to get that information to you and really just get those wheels turning.
And what I would say about having just recently taken your workshop and being really excited about taking the one-on-one offer is that it really brought some ideas on how could I reframe things when I'm speaking about them, when I'm presenting them on my website, or how I'm partnering with other companies. So I would really highly recommend the workshop to anybody local, and definitely taking Dan up on his offer because he can brainstorm with the best of them. Now, Dan, can you tell me, just to wrap this up, a story of somebody that you've worked with that, a success story?
Yeah, I'm going to go in a little different direction than the traditional, let me tell you about all the revenues and profit that I help create. Talk a little bit about my friend, Shelly. She was a client. I worked with her on and off for at least 15 years, probably closer to 20 years. And, I learned as much from her as easily as she learned from me. What I learned from her is that sometimes when I start to talk about financial concepts to owners, I need to slow it down a little bit. And and she did not hesitate to make sure that I understood that I was going too fast. I learned a lot about the right way to manage a team from her, and we spent obviously a lot of time on cash flow. When we take those sort of building blocks, meaning having the right team, understanding cash flow, even the business, I'm not going to, say that the business tripled its revenue or anything like that, but she created a very strong business that she inherited from her father, that really wasn't doing so well once she took it on. And the real success of that is, unfortunately, a few years ago, while only in her early 50s, Shelley went through about 18 months of medical hell, really, in terms of breast cancer and brain cancer, and she ultimately passed away around Labor Day, a few years ago. I learned, so much about her, about courage and taking a stand. My contribution to Shelley, I think, is that I helped her create a business that was in a better place. Two things happened. One, before her dad passed away, he finally acknowledged that she was doing a pretty good job and she was on cloud nine. Unfortunately, she also passed away just a few years after that. But we had created a business that could be passed on to someone else without fear of all of it falling apart. So it was just that stability that she built, that I'm really happy that I was able to be a part of it.
I think having the ability to help small businesses and their owners have that safety net, and because a lot of us don't think about being able to sell it or being able to, like, if something were to happen, that hit by the bus plan is not in place. And so I'm really glad that you were able to help her do that.
Yeah. It was, she was one of those clients who became a friend, and, I would have and did do anything for her.
Well, thank you so much, Dan, for being on the show. I really appreciate it. If anybody has any questions for Dan, please put them in the chat below and we will get to them. Thank you very much for joining us today, and have a lovely rest of your day.